How is it going? Ladies and gentlemen, it is Kyle coming back at you with another video. Today I wanted to talk about some more interview related topics that I discussed in the last video. I kind of wanted to get into some of the tougher interview questions that you might be facing in your next round of interviews. I had a couple of people commenting on the last video about some issues, and I've had people DMing me on Instagram and messaging me through LinkedIn asking about some of the questions that I get asked at my interviews. And they've been giving me some of the scenarios that they've been put in with some questions they've been asked. So I figured it might be a good time to kind of buckle down and get into some of the common interview questions that you might be experiencing coming across, and how you can answer them well. So I've picked 5 questions that I think are fairly common and also fairly difficult to answer, especially if you haven't prepared for them at all leading up to your interview. The reason that interviewers are going to be asking these difficult questions is that they are trying to get a better sense of who you are as a person, getting an idea of how experienced you are, how experienced you might be coming into the position, and as well learning about your thought process, trying to see if you are an analytical thinker or if you are, more strategic in how you think, everything like that. So they're going to be trying to get a bead on how you are, basically trying to get a better sense of who you are as a person. And that's honestly what an interview is, but these difficult questions are known to kind of throw people off. And so it gives them a really good idea of who you are, get a really good sense of who you are as a person, without allowing you to prepare as much for them. So I think that it's important, as someone who's going to get interviewed, is that you prepare for them as best as you can. By going over these questions, it's going to help prepare you better for your interviews coming up, give you an idea, some things to think about before you answer the question, and ultimately help you land that job. So let's just get right into it. The first question that I'm going to lead off with is probably the most common one of the 5 that I'm going to bring up here today, and that is going to be the dreaded, what is your biggest weakness? This question is meant to give the employer an idea as to, obviously, some detriments in your personal character that might prevent you from doing the job well. The most important thing that you want to say when you're answering this question is, yes, you want to give them a weakness. You don't want to blank on it, and you don't want to say, well, I think I'm pretty well-rounded in all areas. You don't want to say that. That just makes you come across as arrogant and overconfident in yourself, because obviously everybody has weaknesses. But the biggest thing that you want to bring up when you answer this question is 2 things. One, you want to give the interviewer a weakness of yours that is a weakness, and you want to make sure that it's something that isn't going to necessarily detract from your ability to do the job well. So you would not want to say, for example, if let's say you're going into a management interview, you don't want to say, well, I've really struggled with communicating with employees in the past. That's just a red flag right there, and you probably won't get the job for that reason alone. And the second thing that you're going to want to do when you answer this question, so the first part is giving them a weakness that isn't necessarily going to detract from your promise as a candidate. You also want to address what you're working on that is going to make that weakness a strength of yours. Things that you're proactively doing to minimize the weakness, okay? So for example, you might say something like, well, the biggest weakness that I'm working on right now is my ability to give out positive feedback. And something I've been doing to work on this is I've been taking notes throughout meetings with employees on areas where I feel like there could be some improvement. So when it comes time to give positive feedback, or constructive feedback, when it comes time to give constructive feedback, I have some situations that I can bring up to properly address it so that we can work on it. That'd be a good example of something that you could say for one of your weaknesses. Now, the second question that I'm going to bring up here is, what is your greatest achievement? Now, I remember I was actually asked this question in one of my previous interviews with Aldi, and it totally threw me off. I had not prepared to answer a question like this. I barely have much work experience at all, so I didn't really know how to tie in a big achievement I have in my work, because ultimately I didn't really have anything that I thought was that great. So the first thing I can say about this is that you definitely want to prepare something ahead of time so that you can at least answer this question to the best of your ability. Whether or not that achievement is all that great, you might be coming out of school just like I was, or maybe you've been tenured for 20 years. You just want to make sure that you have something prepared that you could bring up and talk about. Because the next part of answering that question is, once you've thought of your achievement, you want to explain what your role was in achieving it. You don't want to just say, my sales team did $1 million in sales this past month. You want to say something more along the lines of, my sales team and I worked hard to produce $1 million in sales, and I had a direct impact in this because A, B, and C, or whatever you did to specifically help your team do $1 million in sales. So it's important to kind of paint the picture as to the general context of your achievement, and then specifically drill down into what you did specifically to do that achievement, to what you did to make that achievement possible. So that's going to be important. And you also, just another little tip here, is that you're going to want to try to pull something from recent work experience. Ideally, you don't want to use something that happened 10, 15 years ago, because what other achievements have you done since then? You might have had one breakthrough goal that you hit, or, a reward that you received, but employers ideally want to see stuff that you're doing fairly recently so that they know that there's still that drive for you to do well, not that drive that was there 10 years ago, but now you're 50, 60 years old and you're just kind of trying to coast to the finish line, if that makes sense. So those are going to be my tips for answering that question. Now, another question I've been asked recently in interviews is, are you willing to fail? And your gut reaction might be to say, no, I don't want to fail. I'm always trying to succeed. And that's not exactly how you want to answer that, because obviously everybody fails. So a response should be more so along the lines of, well, I don't actively seek out failure. I understand it to be a common part of life and really a great opportunity to learn. And recently, because then this is going to be the next part of answering that question, you want to give a situation in which you failed, and then you can talk about what you did as a result of that. So you could say something along the lines of, recently, my sales team missed our goal of hitting $1 million in sales, but it was a great opportunity for us to look into some of our weaknesses and figure out ways that we could turn them into strengths so that next month we hit our goals. And in the next month, we actually did end up beating our goals by 5% or something along those lines. So you want to address that you don't like to fail, obviously, but you understand that it's something that happens to everybody, and things that you do as a result of failure. Basically, you want to say, things that you've learned, failure is a great opportunity to learn, and that you use it as an opportunity to grow as a person and as an employee. Now, another question that oftentimes gets asked, and it's actually a bit of a curveball, this is one of those questions where employers are trying to trip you up a little bit, is they'll say, if you could relive the past 5 or 10 years of your life, what would you do differently? Now, this is where an employer is trying to get you to exploit some of your own weaknesses. Obviously, if someone asks you that question, you're going to be looking at things that you wish you did differently, and you could be putting yourself in a position to say, oh, well, I wasn't a great communicator, something along those lines. But a safe and probably your best way of answering this question is, I don't think that I would change anything about how I've addressed my situations and how I have grown as a person, because it has led me to these great opportunities and great situations where I can learn and build upon, as well as putting me in a position to be here today doing this interview, something along those lines, where it's brought you to be the person that you are today and has put you in this great position to be interviewing for this job, or that you've been, you worked for a great company at your last job and now you're interviewing at this job. Essentially, you don't really want to say that you would change all that much. And if you do bring that up, which I don't recommend, you really don't want to say anything that would kind of dissuade the interviewer. Basically, if you are going to say that there are some things that you would change, you kind of want to avoid that path of going down where you're going to be saying, oh, well, I wish I would have done this. I wish I had the drive to do that. Because that's just putting all these negative connotations in the interviewer's head. Just avoid answering the question like that. Just talk about the fact that everything that you've done in the last 5 to 10 years has put you in the position where you are today, and that you wouldn't really change a thing. And the last question that I want to bring up, and this is one that I swear I've been asked about in just about every interview, is who was your best supervisor and who was your worst? It's kind of a weird question. You really wouldn't think that this would be so common, but for me it has for some reason. Answering this question isn't as much about what you say, but more so how you say it. Employers are looking to see your overall attitude towards your boss, because who knows, the person that is interviewing you could be the hiring manager. They could be your boss. And they don't want to see that you answer a question and you directly go towards throwing shade on your past employers when you answer that who is your worst boss question. To answer this question, you can talk about, your best boss. Sarah was my best boss because she really worked with me to develop my character and develop my work ethic and everything like that. But then when you go to talk about your worst boss, Adam wasn't, I would say Adam was probably my worst boss. If anything, I just felt as if he could have worked with me more to help develop as an employee, as a salesman, etc., something like that. You don't want to say, Adam was a terrible boss. He never helped me with anything. He never got back to my emails. He kind of just let me do my own thing. And as a result, I didn't perform well. You don't want to say that, because it just shows kind of as a person that you really can be negative and that you don't have this positive approach to your bosses and you're not trying to learn, everything like that. So you want to avoid saying and just directly throwing shade at someone, one of your past bosses. You want to say something more along the lines of, without being judgmental, that, I just wish that they would have worked with me more. I feel like I could have done more for the company if I had a little bit more guidance. Something along those lines. You really don't want to get too negative with how you speak on their behalf, because the hiring manager or the interviewer is going to take that and they're going to note that. Because if you're saying that about a boss you've had in the past, why wouldn't you say that about the boss that you're going to have in the future? So that's probably the best way that I would answer that question. So that's really going to be it for me, you guys. I wanted to thank everyone for the support that I've been getting on the videos recently. At this point in time, we're almost at 100 subscribers, which is awesome. Definitely a big milestone for me. I didn't think that I would really have that audience. Just the thought of having 100 people that are watching me consistently and listening to what I have to say is great. I've loved interacting with you guys on Instagram and LinkedIn. It has been awesome to connect with you and learn about your stories and the situations you're in. So that's a great opportunity for me to say that the links to my Instagram and LinkedIn will be in the bio. I try to respond to people as quickly as possible on Instagram, and I get on LinkedIn about once or twice a week to look at, questions that you guys might be having. So feel free to connect with me on both of those platforms. If you enjoyed the video, like it, comment down below any more questions that you have for me. I'd be happy to answer anything you guys have. That's obviously why I'm here. And feel free to subscribe. Again, we're almost at 100 subscribers. So I look forward to continuing to make videos and interact with you guys in the future. If you have any questions, like I said, down below. Also, the links to Instagram and LinkedIn are also down below in the description. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Have a good one. Peace.